Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dice, Ice, and Mice. Today we're going to be talking about something that came out with the newer now, Unearthed Arcana. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the two new released subclasses for one of my favorite classes in all of D&D. That is going to be the Fighter. They released two new subclasses with that, and they are the Psychic Warrior and the Rune Knight. I've already gotten the chance to play the Rune Knight, and I don't know, for those of you that watched the Darien Brigade version of Critical Role, their live show, Ashley Johnson's character also played a Rune Knight fighter. So we'll talk about that, but first we're going to talk about the Psychic Warrior. Starting off, when you select that at 3rd level, I'll read the description of it first. So, as a Psychic Warrior, you might have honed your psionic abilities through your own disciplined practice, unlocked it under the tutelage of a master, or developed it at an academy dedicated to wielding the mind's power as both weapon and shield. A Psychic Warrior is a fighter who augments their physical might with psychically infused weapon strikes, telekinetic lashes, and barriers of mental force. This has been a thing that seemed to be a big focus of this most recent push of Unearthed Arcana, kind of bringing back the world of psionics, especially here in the fighter. Some of the stuff they did with one of their rogue classes, which I'll do a video discussing the rogue subclasses as well, but this is a really big one. There's a lot of spells that lean into psionics more. So starting off, something you gain at 3rd level is you gain a featured psionic armament. These are just my notes here that I have printed out. Just don't worry about it. There's no paper. So, at 3rd level and 10th level, you can channel your psychic power to magically augment your prowess. When you finish a long rest, choose whether to augment your defenses or your strikes. The chosen benefit lasts until you finish a long rest. So you are able to pick from one of two different styles of augmentation immediately when you finish a long rest. And they are augmented defenses and augmented strikes. Augmented defenses is as follows. When you are a creature who can see within 30 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to roll a d10 and reduce the amount of damage taken by the number rolled. When you reach 10th level in this class, the die changes to a d12. Kind of similar to how some of Cutting Words works. Somewhat similar. Although that has to deal more with the attack, less the damage, from my understanding of Cutting Words. I have never played a bard, and I've never played anyone that actually has Cutting Words, nor have any of my characters that I have ever had in a campaign. So I do need to review the rules on Cutting Words, but this seems fairly similar to Cutting Words. And this just is something you can use on your reaction. Augmented Strikes. Once during each of your turns, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can also deal 1d4 psychic damage to that target. When you reach 10th level in this class, the psychic damage increases to 1d6. This does, to me, personally, seem a little underpowered for how it's talking about wanting to augment strikes. 1d4 doesn't necessarily seem like a lot, especially when you reach up those higher levels. However, it definitely can, with crits and stuff like that, it definitely can add up. Especially because you double your dice. So that would become 2d6, 2d4, etc., etc., etc. But I personally feel like that is somewhat underpowered. Another thing we gain at 3rd level, taking the Psychic Warrior archetype for fighter, is Telekinetic Hand. You learn the Mage Hand cantrip. You cast it without components, and you can make the Spectral Hand invisible. Intelligence is your spellcasting ability for this spell. Fairly standard, you just learn how to Mage Hand move around. Mage Hand being invisible is very, very beneficial. That could be very good for a sleight of hand. If you are a rogue who is multi-classed into fighter, you can take this class. That could be very, very handy. Pun not intended initially, but now very, very much intended now that it's been made. My heater just turned on. But you got that Psychic Hand, Mage Hand out there. If it's invisible, some sleight of hand, very good pickpocketing. etc., etc., etc. Alright, so that's all the stuff we gain initially. Then we'll go through the class. We'll initially be building up the same stuff, extra attack, action surges, etc., etc., etc. At 7th level is when we gain our next Psychic Warrior feature. That is going to be Strength of Mind. As a bonus action, you can telekinetically lash out at a creature you can see within 20 feet of you. The target must make a Strength saving throw against a DC equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. On a failed save, the target takes force damage equal to 2d6 plus your intelligence modifier and is telekinetically moved 15 feet toward or away from you, choice of the caster. On a successful save, takes half as much damage and is not moved. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier, minimum of 1. And you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This can actually be very, very beneficial in my opinion. You have the ability to, especially for instance, if you are a very heavily melee-based fighter, saying with greatsword, etc., 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 you can just go ahead and literally just reach out, grab something, and move it that much closer to you. And this is all as a bonus action. So, all is a bonus action, and you can just pull them straight towards you. Controversially, if it is a ranged character, I used the wrong word there. If you are a ranged fighter specializing in archery or something along that line, you can do the same thing and just move them 15 feet away, getting them all the way out of there. Saving throw, not necessarily going to be a huge problem for some creatures to beat, but depending on where you have your intelligence at, especially as you get to higher levels, it's going to be a lot more interesting. This could be very interesting power at higher levels past that 7th level. This is a very intelligence-based archetype, which I was actually experimenting with a intelligence-based bugbear fighter archetype earlier, so it can be very, very interesting. Next feature we gain will be at 10th level, Telekinetic Bulwark. When you take the attack action, you can forego one of your attacks to project a bastion of psionic power in a 10-foot radius around you. It lasts for 1 minute, or until you are incapacitated. For the duration, you and your allies in that area gain the benefits of half cover and have advantage on strength saving throws. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, or until after you use your second wind feature. See, this is interesting, and this is very interesting to me specifically for that last line. This, where you can use this again immediately after, well, not immediately after, but on the next turn, following the use of your second wind. I very, very much like that. That adds a special bit of benefit that you get just from even being a fighter. Because some of these things wouldn't even necessarily seem out of place in any other class. But this specifically adds benefits for you being a fighter. I also enjoy that it specifies when you take the attack action, you can forego one of your attacks. Because by this point we already have an extra attack, so we can hit once and then do this. These benefits of half cover to you and your allies, especially in a scenario where you are in a kill box or something like that, and you're dealing with a lot of ranged characters, a lot of ranged opponents, that half cover can make the difference between a TPK and a success. The advantage on strength saving throws can come in real handy facing creatures that have to deal with that. My party recently in Descent into Avernus faced a room filled with 3 Minotaurs, which almost TPK'd us, but didn't thanks to our wizard and a few well-placed shatter spells. Either way, the thing I like most about this is its ability to regain the use after the use of second wind, as well as its half cover feature. Not necessarily the strength saving throws, but the half cover can be very valuable in my opinion. Second to last feature we gain from this class, Agonizing Strikes. We gain these at 15th level. I don't want to go back. 10th level is where those die increase for augmented defenses and augmented strikes. I forgot to mention that. Agonizing Strikes at 15th level. Your attacks can channel Psychic Agony. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can also deal 2d10 psychic damage to that target and force it to make a Constitution saving throw against DC with 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. Unless the save succeeds, the target falls prone, and it suffers disadvantage on ability checks until the end of your next turn. You can use this feature a number of times, equal to your intelligence modifier, minimum of once, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. I love that. That is probably my favorite part of this actual subclass. At 2d10 psychic damage, there's not a lot of creatures in D&D that have psychic damage immunity. So this can be very, very beneficial. So again, it does say that they have to make a Constitution saving throw before they can be knocked prone, but it specifies when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, a lot of fighters end up being those melee fighters, right up close and personal, if they're taking a subclass like this. If they're a ranged character, they're usually taking something like Arcane Archer, or possibly even Gunslinger, which is a critical role, but I've seen it used very, very well. Again, it all does still boil down to that intelligence modifier, but by this point your proficiency modifier is very high as well, so you're getting a lot of creatures that maybe won't be succeeding on that, especially because it's, not especially because it's the Constitution, but add a Constitution saving throw. If it has something and it's knocking it prone, and you are one of those melee characters, especially if you do this on your first strike, you get advantage on those follow-ups, those 2 follow-up attacks by this level. At advantage, you can deal a lot of damage by this point. So I very, very, very much like that feature of this. The final thing that we gain at 18th level, final Psychic Warrior feature, is Psychic Dreadnought, which immediately just makes me think Astral Dreadnought, but it has absolutely nothing. The power of your mind fuses your entire being, making you a nigh unstoppable force on the battlefield. Using your reaction, when you take damage, you can give yourself the following benefits for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. At the start of each of your turns, you regain 10 hit points, your walking speed increases by 10 feet, and if you are prone, you can stand up by spending 5 feet of movement as opposed to the traditional half. This is also very, very nice. The 10 feet walking speed increase and the 5 foot prone are they're nice, but they're not the real creme de la creme of this feature for me. It's that regaining 10 hit points every turn at the start of your turn until you're incapacitated or after. So you will gain 100 hit points back unless you're incapacitated with this, which, especially if you're taking damage, very nice. If you are that long-range fighter, maybe not necessarily the best, but if you're up close and personal, this is definitely going to probably keep you alive. It could, again, be the difference between a victory or a PDK. All in all, I really like the Psychic Warrior as a subclass. There are a few key things in it that stick out to me and that I really, really enjoy. Primarily, the agonizing strikes are the main thing, as well as the strength of mind. The rest of it is decent, but it's primarily that 7th level feature and that 15th level feature. At 7th level, you're a pretty good fighter by that point. You're sufficiently martial class with this extra little bit. I don't necessarily see this as being superior to, say, the Eldritch Knight or anything like that, because of just the sheer amount of spells you can get with an intelligence modifier that's high enough. But this is definitely something to consider, especially if you want to use more of the psionics that have been kind of lacking in 5e up to this point in time. Next up, we have the Rune Knight. As I said, I've gotten the chance to play a Rune Knight character, and I absolutely loved it. He was only up to a level 7 when I got to play him, but I had so much fun with it. I had so much fun with playing a Rune Knight. You have discovered how to enhance your martial prowess using the supernatural power of runes. Ancient practice of rune magic originated with giants. Slitgrader, or rune cutters, can be found among any type of giants, and you'll likely learn your methods first or second hand from such a mystical artisan. Whether you found the giant's work carved into a hill or cave, learned of the runes from a traveling sage, or met the giant in person, you studied the giant's craft. In time, you learned how to craft and apply runes to your equipment, and how to invoke their magic, ultimately becoming a rune. Bonus proficiencies you gain with being a rune knight. This is stuff you immediately get at 3rd level. You gain proficiency with smith tools. You learn to read, write, and speak giant. Not necessarily a big thing. A lot of classes are able to learn an extra language somewhere within there, also based on backgrounds. So you could get giant from that. However, it is nice to have that extra language, especially if you're doing something like, especially if you're doing some pre-made modules where giants are very prevalent. I personally, I love using giants. Gosh, I'm very, very tired. I'm very, very sore. I love using giants in my campaigns. Like my frost giant minis, I love plopping these down on the table because it always freaks out my players. It's great to just go frost giant and just watch the players go. Ah! Absolutely fantastic. So players that are able to speak giant, especially if we have, say, players that are able to cast spells where they can, say, charm person, friends, etc., etc., etc. This can turn out to be very, very well, just being able to even speak giant, parlay, that sort of thing. Rune magic. This is where the actual meat of this subclass is in the rune magic. And I enjoy it so much. Although, I'm big tangent right here. I love the idea of this so much that my character that I am replacing my now deceased character in Descent into Avernus with, although he is not a rune knight, and I have no intention of taking him that route yet, he still has, it would make perfect sense if he took this route. Because the way I've taken it is he's got giant runes. He has hair somewhat similar to mine. He has giant runes tattooed all along the back of his head and stuff. It's just fascinating with the culture. I am as well. I think it's amazing. Alright, tangent, back. Okay. Rune magic. You learn how to use runes to enhance your gear. When you gain this feature, you learn how to inscribe 2 runes of your choice on weapons, armor, or shields. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can touch a number of objects equal to the number of runes you know, and you inscribe a different rune onto each of the objects. To be eligible, an object must be a weapon, a suit of armor, or a shield. The rune remains on the object until you finish a long rest, and an object can only bear 1 of your runes. Each time you gain a level in the class, you can replace 1 rune you know with a different one. Alright, so currently, at this point in Thurb, you know 2 giant runes, which you can inscribe onto items. I'm going to go through the list of runes we have right now. These are, if a rune requires a saving throw, the saving throw is through a DC of 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence. So this is another intelligence-based fighter archetype. Howd, or the hill rune. This rune's magic bestows a resilience reminiscent of a hill giant. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned. You have resistance against poison damage. In addition, you can invoke the rune as a bonus action, gaining resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage for 1 minute. Once you invoke the rune, you can't do so again until you finish a long or short rest. This essentially, what this kind of does in my mind, is it almost acts as a rage where you're still able to cast spells, without that kind of strength increase. However, you are resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. However, it does not specify magical versus non-magical. So my ruling as a DM, since it doesn't specify in the rules, something I've always done in terms of D&D rules as a DM, my rule has always been you take the more general reasoning of the rule. So my ruling for this would be you gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing for across the entire spectrum, which would include magical attacks. If you disagree, you can have a let, tell me why. It's up to you. Again, it's DM preference. The advantage on saving throws against being poisoned and resistance of poison damage, very enemy specific, depending on where you're at. Next rune is Il, the fire rune. This object's runes channels the masterful craftsmanship of the fire giant smiths. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability checks you make that requires or that uses your proficiency with a tool. Beneficial right there. In addition, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can invoke the rune to summon fiery shackles. The target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be restrained for 1 minute. While restrained by the shackles, the target takes 2d6 fire damage at the start of each of its turns. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, banishing the shackles on success. Once you invoke the rune, you cannot do so again until you finish a short or long rest. Okay, this was one of the runes that I had my character using, that he had around, and I loved this one because that big thing right there. The target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be restrained for 1 minute. There's a lot of enemies that are in the monster manual that are powerful, but have crappy strength. So doing this right there, especially if you've got good intelligence and you're high enough on that proficiency, even just taking the gamble and hoping they roll bad. If you can restrain them, your allies, everything gets that attack, gets those advantages on your attacks. And because, unless I'm mistaken, this is just when you hit the creature with the attack. So you already have an extra attack. Well, you wouldn't have an extra attack by this point, but if you already have your extra attack and you just take that swing and you hit it, and you do that, you get advantage on your next one. And at higher levels, continually get advantage on your successive strikes. I will say I do not. One thing that I would. This is kind of an iffy thing because it says when you hit, you invoke the rune to summon the fiery shackles, and then also later it says once you invoke the rune, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. This would be one of the things where I would say like the power of the. It's iffy. It's iffy. Her wording alone, it would be if they succeed on strength saving throw and the shackles fail, that's it. The rune's just done. However, I would almost rule that it didn't use the power of the rune completely, so it doesn't count. Again, it's kind of iffy. I'm a very generous DM in terms of what characters can do. I like to let my characters do more than other DMs probably do. But in my opinion, this rune is well worth inscribing on your character, even if you're in a place where a lot of enemies are resistant or even immune to the fire damage. Because that restraint for 1 minute, whew, even if they eventually get that, that's still 1 round at least of all attacks having an advantage on them, which is well worth it, in my opinion. Isid, the Frost Rune. This rune's magic evokes a Frost Giant's stoic calm. Frost Giant. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on Wisdom, specifically Animal Handling, checks, and Charisma, specifically Intimidation checks. In addition, you can invoke the rune as a bonus action to increase your strength score by 2 for 10 minutes. This increase can cause your score to exceed 20, but not 30. Once you invoke the rune, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, or short rest. Strength score by 20, especially for fighters that are very melee-based, strength weapon-based, very nice. That +2, you're automatically having that +1 to your attack, and that +1 to your damage rolls. So, very nice. And since it does allow your score to exceed 20, that's something that a lot of classes never are able to do, is exceed that score. But and if you already have magic items that put your score above 20, I mean, you're walking on sunshine at that point. Alright, Sky, or the Cloud Rune. This rune's magic emulates the deceptiveness of a cloud giant. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on Dexterity, specifically Sleight of Hand checks, and Charisma Deception checks. In addition, when you or a creature can see within 30 feet of you, is hit by an attack roll, you can use a reaction to invoke the rune and cause the attack to target a different creature within 30 feet of you, other than the attacker, using the same roll. This magic can transfer the attack regardless of the attack's range. Once you invoke the rune, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. I like that, because it also does not specify whether or not you have to transfer it to one of your allies or an enemy of the attacker. So that literally means you could be getting attacked by, say, 3 goblins, let's say. One goblin attacked your buddy, reaction, transfer the attack, that attack immediately just hits one of his buddies. That's how I would work that. Very beneficial, not one of the ones that I had running. I had fire, and I also had the stone, are the ones that I had on my character. Alright, next one is going to be Stein, the stone rune. This rune's magic channels the insightfulness of a stone giant. While wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on wisdom insight checks. You have dark vision out to a range of 60 feet. If you already have dark vision, its range increases by 30 feet. In addition, when a creature you can see ends its turn within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction to invoke the rune and force the creature to make a wisdom saving throw. Unless the save succeeds, the creature is charmed by you for 1 minute. While charmed in this way, the creature has a speed of 0 and is incapacitated, descending into a dreamy stupor. This effect ends if the charmed creature takes any damage or if someone else uses its action to shake the creature out of its haze. Once you invoke the rune, again, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. Again, I would rule as a DM that unless the save succeeds, you technically didn't invoke your rune, so you'd be able to use it. And yeah, you'd be able to attempt it again, but not on the same creature. Because it has to make your reaction when the creature ends its turn within 30 feet. The dark vision is part of the real reason that my character took this. We never ended up getting to a point where a lot of creatures were failing this save, so I never got to experiment with that a whole lot. But you're essentially stunning a creature indefinitely until they take damage. So can be very, 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 very beneficial if used in the right circumstance. So it would be very key point of picking your reaction. For example, if my current character, well, my now deceased character, playing through Descent into Avernus, and we're at Haruman's Hill, if he had had this rune, I would have suggested using this rune immediately as soon as Haruman entered that 30-foot radius of him, and attempt to incapacitate him. In which case, it would have been a lot easier to deal with his nightmare, and then deal with him. However, it didn't actually turn out that way. My character ended up dealing quite a bit of damage before getting decimated. But I digress. So again, I really like the idea behind this particular rune and the fire rune are my 2 favorites. The last one is we have Ubar, the stone rune. Storm rune. Using this rune, you can glimpse into the future like a storm giant. While wearing or carrying an object described with this rune, you have advantage on Arcana checks and can't be surprised as long as you are incapacitated, not incapacitated. In addition, you can invoke the rune as a bonus action to enter a prophetic state for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. Until the spell ends, when you or another creature you can see within 60 feet of you makes an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. You can use your reaction to cause the roll to have advantage or disadvantage. Once you invoke the rune, you can do so again until you finish a short or long rest. Also, very, very nice. When I got to the point where I was able to pick a 3rd rune, this was the 3rd one that I would have picked. Because being able to just use your reaction to add that advantage or disadvantage is very, very nice. The sad thing I don't like is it is taking away your reaction, which as a fighter is very beneficial and almost necessary, dealing those opportunity attacks. I mean, it's not something I feel like they should change. It's a good way of balancing the power of that rune. I'm trying to remember. I completely forgot what I was going to say. I forgot my notes. I completely forgot what was on there. Anyway. The last thing that you gain, so of those runes, you get to pick 2 of them at 3rd level. I don't remember when you get to pick. So you get to pick another rune at 3rd level, that's 3rd level, at 7th level, another one at 10th, one more 15, and then that is it. So you would have a total of 5 at level 15. The last feature you get as 3rd level is Giant Might. You can imbue yourself with the Might of Giants. As a bonus action, you magically gain the following benefits, which last for 1 minute. If you are smaller than large, you become large, along with anything you are wearing. If you lack the room to become large, your size does not change. You have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws, and your weapon attacks deal an extra 1d6 damage. You can use this feature twice and regain all expended uses of it when you finish a long rest. Okay, this essentially sounds like a use of the Titan Stone Knuckles from Critical Role, which I'm completely okay with. I mean, it's not quite as complex as that. It's literally just advantage on... It's kind of a combination between the Titan Stone Knuckles and Barbarian Rage. But I very, very much like that, because it's especially awesome to imagine your character just going from its single space to just getting big. At 7th level, you get defensive runes. You learn to invoke your rune magic to protect your allies. When another creature you see within 60 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to grant bonus to the creature's AC against the attack. That bonus is 1 plus your intelligence modifier, a minimum of +2. And then you roll more. Again, there's a lot of stuff in here that causes the use of your reaction, which I'm not a big fan of, but in this case I do feel like it is worth it. 10th level, Great Stature. The magic of your runes permanently alters you. When you gain this feature, roll 3d4. You grow a number of inches in height equal to the roll. Moreover, the extra damage you deal with Giant Might feature increases to 1d8. This one, apart from the Giant Might increasing to 1d8 in the learning of an extra rune, I really feel like this is kind of pointless. Because just your height doesn't really have an impact, in my opinion, on gameplay. If it does, please correct me. But your actual character height doesn't really matter. So I kind of disagree with this particular feature. Apart from the increase of Giant Might to 1d8. So, moving past that to our 15th level feature, Rune Magic Mastery. You can invoke each rune you know from your Rune Magic feature twice rather than once, which is big. That is a big bonus. And you regain all expended uses when you finish a short or long rest. In addition, you learn 1 new rune of your choice from the Rune Magic feature for a total of 5. This is the last rune you get to use, you get to learn. Unless I'm mistaken, that is the last... No, so there are a total of 6 runes. So you don't get one of them, but you get to pick which one you don't get. It is very nice to have the ability to use your rune magics twice. So that would be you, at this point, you'd be able to use your rune magic 10 times. 10 times instead of just the bit you had before. So again, very, very nice. And the final thing we get, our 18th level Rune Knight feature, Blessing of the All-Father. Storm. Learn how to share your rune magic with your allies. When you use your Giant Might feature, you can choose 1 willing creature that you can see within 60 feet of you. The chosen creature also gains the benefit of your Giant Might feature. Okay, this one is a big deal. If you get to an 18th level Rune Knight, your party, in my opinion, is almost to the point of just... You do that, pick the Barbarian, get that advantage on strength checks, dealing that 1d8, and being giant, you got a lot of stuff going. Whew. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. All in all, I really like... In talking about the Rune Knight class, or subclass, I like the idea of it more than I liked it in practice, if that makes sense. The idea of essentially a giant fascinated fighter harnessing the magic of that people and using it to enhance their own attacks via mystical runes, I absolutely love it. It's amazing. I love it to bits. A lot of their stuff seems very dulled down to the point where it's not as effective as I feel like it could be. I feel like there needs to be, especially given the fact that it's freaking giants, there needs to be more to some of their offensive capabilities. But I love the idea of this class in practice, and in practice, it still ended up being a lot of fun. And especially at higher levels, it can be very effective. But I feel like there was just a lot more they could have done to make it even better. But I digress. That is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. If you guys did, please leave a like and a comment down below. And I will see all of you guys in the next video.